has lashed out at the provincial public prosecutions for unfairness in the province. Testifying at the Zondo Commission today, he labelled its 2014 memorandum as containing falsehoods, fabrications and omissions. Booysen said that when he returned to his position in 2014 after serving a 2-year suspension, he requested an update on the prosecution of Durban businessman Toshan Pandey and his then co-accused Colonel Navin Madho. The pair stood accused on 2 cases: alleged corruption in a controversial 60 million rand World Cup accommodation scandal and for allegedly attempting to bribe Booysen with 2 million rand in exchange for him making changes to case documentation which would jeopardize the entire corruption case. The bribery case was later withdrawn by Advocate Noko and the corruption case was dismissed. Well, our reporter in that particular hearing today was Manqoba Mchunu, who's with us now. Manqoba, good evening to you. What was this bribe attempt? What actually happened?
Well, this bribe, you'll recall, Stephen, is relating to a bribe that Durban businessman Toshan Pandey, as well as one of the procurement senior police officials, Navin Madhu, had tried to pay to Booysen to try and quash that investigation. In fact, to tamper with some of the evidence of that investigation so as to compromise that investigation into the alleged tender fraud involving the World Cup. And of course, you'll recall that a sting operation was set up eventually by Booysen and his team, where ultimately Colonel Madhu was arrested during that sting operation. So what he says is that stemming from that arrest, even till now, that particular police officer, Madhu, has still not been prosecuted for that, and says that he remains in his job even till this day, which he finds very peculiar.
So he's still in his job. These claims have been made under oath. The Deputy Chief Justice, the person in charge of this commission, Judge Raymond Zondo, he got involved in this. Yes,
Justice Zondo says that, of course, he also finds it very peculiar that since 2011, nothing has happened. That's 8 years later. So he says that he's now instructed the secretary of the commission to actually write to the National Police Commissioner to inform him or to inquire as to why Madhu is still in his position. But he says that, of course, if something is amiss, then steps need to be taken. So he's definitely saying that they're going to be approaching the National Commissioner to try and get answers as to why Madhu is still in his position, because the concern is that despite the wrongdoing, that there seems to be a culture of impunity within the police service.
And this whole attempt at the time to try and remove Booysen, he says that there was this campaign to remove him from his position. What does he say actually happened?
Well, he says sort of like there was a witch hunt that was there on the side of police, not only the police, but the NPA, to try and remove him from office and to also initiate criminal charges against him. Of course, he spoke about how he had a meeting with the then police commissioner, Ria Pierre, at some point in 2014, where she had offered that he either resign, he either takes a golden handshake or is redeployed. So there was definitely pressure and a witch hunt, he says, from senior police officials who were trying to move him from his office. And he says that it went as far as also having the NPA also not following proper processes in terms of instituting racketeering charges against him. He spoke about the fact that there was misrepresentation of certain truths. He spoke about the fact that there was lies that were told by certain advocates to try and ensure that he gets charged with those racketeering charges. So basically what he's been painting is a picture of how they really wanted him out of office. I remember at some point even saying that at some point the General Ria Pierre had asked that he take a 2-week suspension, a 2 weeks leave from office. And when he asked, he simply says that he was told that he needs to take this leave. And the justice asked, why did she ask that you take this leave? And he says that they simply didn't want me in the office. They wanted me out of the office.
Sure. He and the former, well, I think former, but I mean it's going to be challenged in court, Deputy Head of the National Prosecuting Authority, Advocate Manqoba Mchunu, they have a lot of history, these two. What did he say about her?
Well, we've spoken extensively about how she was one of the enablers of state capture, saying that, of course, Manqoba Mchunu was involved in many of those cases that either were against corruption busters, including himself, as well as other corruption busters like Anwar Tramat, for example, Robert McBride, for example. So he says there seems to be a cabal that was there in the National Prosecuting Authority at the time, which Manqoba Mchunu was at the behest of Manqoba Mchunu. And he says that cabal acted on instructions of Manqoba Mchunu to try and get rid of those corruption busters, but also equally to also withdraw charges against those that were implicated in some of these serious charges. So he's saying that Manqoba Mchunu's role in this whole state capture project was not just a ceremonial one, but she actively was involved in even trying to shield President Jacob Zuma from prosecution.
The person who was the police minister for some of this time was Nathi Mthethwa. He's now Arts and Culture Minister. Was he involved in this?
Well, he's also been implicated by Booysen in trying to interfere with the case, the prosecution case against him. You'll recall that he was charged with racketeering in 2011. And of course, he says that Nathi Mthethwa in 2012 had set up a meeting between him and prosecutors and asking questions about Booysen's case. So which he says he found very irregular because a police minister cannot interfere in the work of the prosecutors. So he says that he found very irregular, even though the minister had said that he was only inquiring about human rights violations with regards to the so-called Ketomena deaths.
Manqoba Mchunu, thanks very much indeed. Really do appreciate it tonight. That's the latest from the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture.